Have you ever thought of someone you haven't spoken to in months and suddenly they call you or leave you a text message? Have you ever wished a song was playing and you walked into a store and it was the next one that came on? Have you ever felt like something or someone else was in a room with you? Have you ever had a vision, a knocking at your soul, a tapping on your shoulder of an idea, a tapping that just wouldn't stop? Have you ever heard a whisper, a deep knowingness guiding you to do something unexpected or not to do something you intended to do? Have you ever wondered what all of that was? Those are just some of the questions you'll start asking yourself after you listen to today's episode of Unscripted. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Unscripted. I'm your host, Nell Daly. I'm a journalist, TV commentator, psychotherapist, and mother of 3. This is a podcast that teaches people how to really live life, not just exist, but really live life, well, a little less scripted. Welcome to the show, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Today's episode is partially supported by Quero Shoes. This is such a great company, I have to tell you. I'm so proud to be aligned with them. Let me tell you a little bit about Quero Shoes. They're handmade shoes for men and women, crafted by Spanish artisans who use only the finest materials from Italy and France and Spain. Quero has made it simple for you to buy a classic upscale shoe that is literally custom designed by you. So how do you do this? You simply go to Quero, that's QUEROHMS.com. You pick out a style you love, and man, do they have some gorgeous styles to choose from. I was on their website, and it's really off the hook. It's awesome. And then build your shoes to fit your own taste and measurements. You can actually pick the laces you want, the heel size, even the exact color of the leather. This is an old way to make shoes, but a new way to buy them. If that's not enough, they even offer free shipping in the US and free returns. That's awesome. And when you sign up for their newsletter, you get an extra 15% off with your purchase. Again, go to QUEROHMS.com to learn more. That's QUEROHMS.com to learn more. I am so grateful to all of you who are tuning in again. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome and thank you. It has been an awesome ride already. 5 episodes in, thousands of downloads, and lots of emails. I'm thrilled for all of the support, especially the support you guys all showed me for Monday's episode. That was a big one for me because in Monday's episode, I confess that I've experienced and do experience some pretty intense moments of using my intuition. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I encourage you to go back to episode 4 and download it. It's meant to be part 1 of this series, which is all about how we can connect more deeply, not just with our own spiritual self, which is our soul, but also our higher conscious self, universal consciousness, and the spiritual world. Before I go any further, I also want to encourage everyone to go and join our private Facebook group, which is called Daily Unscripted. We're starting to build a tribe over there, which is really cool. And I'll be personally checking in and giving the members all sorts of bonus information and access to our guest speakers. So come on over and my team at Point Zero Productions will happily add you. So yeah, today's episode is about intuition. I know for some of you listening, this may all seem far-fetched, or I may be using terms you've never heard of before. Now, like I've said in previous episodes, I'm what I like to call a self-proclaimed reluctant spiritualist. So I get it. I didn't know what many of these things that I talk about in this episode were until about a year ago. But I also want you to know that each episode we do of Unscripted will build upon the next. So as we go, you'll be feeling like you're taking a course on what consciousness means and what it means to wake up to these concepts that are really at the cutting and wild edge of science and physics and technology and medicine. So as you listen to this particular interview, I just want you to relax and open your heart and mind and see what you can absorb. Eventually, I believe all of this will start to make sense. And this brings me to the powerful guest we have on the show today, Jill Willard. Jill Willard is the author of a book called Intuitive Being, which was published by HarperCollins in 2016. And let me tell you a little bit about Jill. Jill Willard was born with a unique ability for predicting the future and intuiting the experiences of others. In addition to giving readings for clients, she has trained corporate executives, pro athletes, and other thought leaders in honing their intuitive skills. Think Gwyneth Paltrow and Patricia Arquette, and executives at Time Inc. and Google. Jill and her work have been featured in Goop, Vanity Fair, Elle, Women's Health, Well and Good, and Mind Body Green. She is also the co-founder of Intuitive Meditation and lives in Manhattan Beach, California, with her husband, who's a broadcaster, and 3 children. In Intuitive Being, Jill argues that everyone can access and strengthen their intuition, and then she teaches us exactly how to do this. Jill, as you'll see from the interview, is super, super smart, like crazy smart. She has a gorgeous mind. You'll hear us laugh a lot, and you'll feel like you're sitting with us for coffee. And I also want you to know what I felt like I was experiencing when I was speaking with her. That the more I learn, the less I know. She is a teacher, and this new study of consciousness that is taking hold of our world is as vast and as deep as she is. Hold on. This interview is a ride.
So my story is this is in my heredity, and I was born with just probably a little more of this muscle. That's all it is. And I believe that this is really in the mind, and part of the mind that's so magnificent that we all have. And so when I was young, I knew it was magnificent, and I loved hearing things. It was like that voice within would tell me something, like I had a best friend on the inside. And I love, best friends on the outside. I wasn't a recluse at all, but I just always knew, especially at a young age when kids are young and even adults are young, especially in the 70s and 80s, I knew I could really trust this voice. And then, I was told I was wrong or I was lying. So I tuned it down a bit. And then once I left for college, friends in high school loved it, but I left for college, and that's really where I felt that freedom to really trust it. And it just worked wonders for me all through college, and then moving away and starting my first job and all of that.
And can I ask, where did you go to college?
Yeah, so I grew up in Northern California, and I went to college at UC Santa Barbara. My parents wanted me to stay in California and wanted me to go to UC, so I chose Santa Barbara and studied communication. It was the most brilliant school to go to, with this intuitive gift. People loved it, very liberal and open. But at the same time, Santa Barbara is very theory-based, and as you can tell, I am analytical. We got to apply what we understand, right? Mm-hmm. And be the same way. So I went to Santa Barbara, very open and free, and then came down to Manhattan Beach right after college, worked for a small publisher, and then went to that world for a while, but always loved the creative side of myself and all others, and really understood that no one's creative or smart, if you will. I think we have both going on. And so it was at that point, the reason I mentioned this to you when I was prepping for you, I loved talking about this aspect. So I think you and all your beautiful listeners and followers will understand this. It's like we're not one or the other. The left side of the brain is very analytical, and the right side is very intuitive and creative. That's for everyone. I think everyone learned to make a choice when they were very small, to be a musician or to go in the business world or whatever it is. And now we're merging that. I mentioned that because that's when I had the turning point of using both sides of the mind at the same time. And that's why I ended up writing the book. When I was in my mid-20s, my intuition opened up again. It was not fun. And, in science, we talk about the prefrontal cortex coming into play, kind of that wisdom aspect. But once I assimilated that information, I just felt more calm and peaceful and centered. And that's what I want for everyone. I don't think we're working from a whole brain or from our wisdom aspect, which it really is in that front part of the mind that meditation opens up, yoga, stillness. So that was the plight. The mediumship stuff started happening about 6 months after I came out to do psychic readings. It's all these great healers and mentors that said I had this. It's in the birth chart, all these different aspects. But I truly feel we all have a certain strength to bring to others. And that's just what this is for me. But everyone can come to the capacity I am. I truly believe. I probably just had a step, one step forward a little earlier. That's really it. And it wasn't always this easy, but it is now. It's a lot more graceful than it was along the way.
And so I just want to talk to you a little bit about, you said that it was painful when it was first happening. Mm-hmm. I think that one of the things that really moved me and drives me to do this podcast is because when I had a spiritual awakening and all these things started happening to me, you have to learn an entire language around. It's like real, and there's no one book, and there couldn't be really.
No.
But even the books that are out there, I found really complex or totally like woo-woo for me.
Yep.
Like I was like, right? And I was like, what? Like I'd be late at night reading about how to talk to my angels, and I found some book on Amazon, like here I am. I have 2 master's degrees. I was a professor at NYU. And the reason I asked why you went to college is because I think it's really important to, not to say that people who are doing this outside of academia or don't have academic backgrounds are not worthy of all of our attention. Everyone has gifts no matter what their upbringing or their education level is. But I think one of the things that we bring to the table is that we're telling sort of the mainstream population that we're actually really well educated and come to this with a lot of science, and that this isn't right. This isn't just like something where sort of we're not sort of gypsy card readers down in the West Village.
Oh, I love this. You are so powerful. I love how you're putting this into words, because some people are getting scared. Yeah, you can't fight this anymore or disagree or say it's woo and put it in that, cute little bottom. We'd probably loved finding that in the village, but most would not lie.
But that was the thing. It was exhausting. The spiritual awakening, they say once you open the door to spirit, you fall down a flight of stairs. And it was learning an entire language around it. And so, I started reading as much as I could. And one of the things that I want to help teach listeners that they can listen through these podcasts, the language that you need to know to tap into this part of your consciousness, which you write extensively about, your intuition.
Yeah. And it is a different language. And then you learn to translate it. You have to have a very open mind to translate it, because we've been trained so in the analytical side of our brain, we black and white it, and that takes all the juice out of it. It's kind of like overcooking a steak or squeezing love out of a relationship. You got to stay centered and be patient. And these tools we don't really have in our culture yet.
So can you describe a little bit about what was painful for you, and if you found any resistance in terms of family or friends when you really started talking about what was going on with you?
Yes, I can. So it was painful in the fact that, one, when you open up intuitively, you're going to see more. You're going to see in people's closets or behind their facade or their face. You're going to see below the surface. So it's similar to an ocean, calm waters may be right on top, but that depth and that darkness, you will see some of it. And then how to find the compassion in that is quite a plight, to see abuse of children, or you see your best friend's husband is doing something towards she or he. It's hard. So my plight really was, I'll tell you, and I swear this is grace be to God, I swear angels came in form, right? Mm-hmm. I always had a group of friends that watched over me. Even when I was young, there'd be guy friends or whatnot. I played sport. I swear that's who always kept me sane and protected in some form. Even if they're like, oh, that's just Jill, they accepted me anyway. That was big. So I would say also for our listeners, even if it's just one person who trusts you or lets you talk with them about what you're seeing or hearing or investigating, that's wonderful. The pain was in family. I'm more honest about this. You can even hear my voice quiver because this is hard. But in my family, our dad is just finally starting to understand what this is. My mom, I don't think has ever understood it. I think she has it. I got it from her mom. or maybe it skipped a generation, but she's just very literal, and she really didn't believe me often. I get that from my sibling as well, sometimes even still, although I think that as this is coming out, I wrote the book anyway, if that makes sense. And then I'm noticing they're coming to spirituality in their own terms, which is so wonderful. Mm-hmm. But yeah, some people have heard the story because I came out with the story about my 20s and whatnot. I would catch cheating even on myself. There's, aspects where it's like I saw myself would make a decision, probably from an ego or fear, and then it would reveal, oh, Jill, look at the decision you made. And I'd be like, oh, darn it. I was already dating someone a year or whatever it was. So the pain of, looking someone in the eye that you love and seeing what they think of you or where they'd just been, the night before, that was a plight. But I learned so much compassion and strength in that forgiveness. And that's what I talk about in the book. I love what you are recognizing because sometimes people think, most are loving the book if you say it's too long or there's a side of it they don't get because you have to get in the emotional side and bring down the wall to let the information saturate. And that comes from a lot of understanding of going through my plight of how to help people move through because, I've gotten so much resistance from family or sometimes even people in readings that I really understand how to help bring the wall down. A lot of love and compassion, but truth to get people to understand. It just takes some layers being removed. So I had that in my family, and that's taught me a lot.
I think it's really incredible because I don't think a day goes by. I get a ton of resistance from my family as well, which again, I can feel my voice quivering talking about it.
Yeah.
But
love.
I think a lot of quote unquote healers do, but
Yeah.
I think that's also part of the karmic contract. And I know that, again, this is a new language that a lot of listeners are going to be hearing. Yeah. But part of the karmic contract, I think our souls, those of us who are light workers or healers or go into medicine or some sort of therapeutic science, must choose on some level because all of us talk about the failure resistance. And I think, though, it makes us work that muscle harder. It's kind of like lifting a weight, like an emotional or psychic weight every day, like a weight bench, like a free weight. And I think it constantly is making us go back to faith.
Well said.
Right? Like
that's stronger.
Right.
Yeah, please go ahead.
That's the spiritual warriorship that we're faced with, is that we actually have to keep going. All right, everyone around me who loves me and who I'm born from is telling me I'm crazy, but I have to continue to go back to my faith and hit my knees in prayer and meditation and know that the signs that I'm seeing or the voices that I'm hearing or the energy that I'm witnessing around me or the mediumship that's happening is real to me.
Absolutely. And helpful. And you're just spot on. And then there's that strength and grace. I think a lot of people go into the warrior and then there's a passive aggressiveness that could happen. And I've never been that. I'm not passive aggressive, but I'm sometimes too passive. And then I defend myself, which I think in my terms was a form of aggression to me because I knew better. And I was thinking about this morning when I was prepping about how much this podcast, I think, talks about humankind and how kind we need to be to ourselves and others. But it's very important for your listeners to know that it takes the warriorship, but then it takes a lot of heart and kind of that really brave heart of that compassion because it can hurt, like we said. And I love you're focusing on this because this is where we're at. And we make these choices every day about what to do in a situation. If you go home for a holiday, if you're try to explain to a parent or a loved one, this is what I'm working on, and they do not see you at all, and be okay with that. Don't seek so much approval outwardly. That's one of the key reasons I wrote the book. Go in. And there'll be a lot of love and support within. And right?
Well, when one agent who took a look at the book proposal I wrote said, when she said, you're going to ruin your career, I said, oh, I don't care.
Good, exactly.
I was just like, I had to let go of that a long time ago because if you can't practice this or you can't, but and
I'm going to say that agent might have subconsciously been thinking you're going to ruin their career.
Yeah,
I think going to go for it.
Actually, she said, you're intuitive because she said in the email, I like to be able to defend my authors, and I don't know if I can defend this.
Yes, exactly. And I wanted to say that so the listeners understand this. Speak. You'll really start to understand people better. When they say, I fear for you, and it could be, wait, I'm fearing you're going away from me, or I fear that you're going to know something I don't, or yeah, I can't defend you because I don't know what to say. You just start, and then that's where the compassion or just understanding starts to occur. You go, I understand what they're really saying. And it's out of love or it's out of fear. We're confused about that aspect a bit, but anyway, once you become more intuitive, you'll know how to handle it.
Okay, so let's go to so the book, it describes what intuition is.
Yes.
And if you could just give your own little quick, I'm sure, your elevator pitch on what is intuition.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So intuition is a knowing, and it's a knowing that kind of defies logic or what we've learned as logic. It comes from within, so it can be the small voice within, or you can feel it comes from, your God or something outside of you, but it's so profound, and it's usually not what you see. Sometimes I say walking on earth. It's kind of like coming from the sky. So intuition is a knowing, and it's spot on every time.
And one of the things that really moved me was that you talk about how it's something that we feel inside of us, because I get a lot of questions, and I've been in classes that talk about consciousness and levels of consciousness and intuition, like a feeling in your gut. Like sometimes it's described as a feeling in your gut that you just know something is either going to happen, or you know the truth about something that you need to do, but maybe you're scared to do it. Or it's something that, again, you say comes from the outside, like a voice that you're hearing. And I loved how you talked about how the intuition can come from both places.
Exactly.
That it's a knowingness that comes from outside and within.
And it's the same thing at the end of the day, which I think we'll talk about for years to come. Exactly. We believe in separate worlds. I don't believe they are, but that's what we're moving through right now, if that makes sense. So learning there's no separation will help people, because sometimes people say, oh, that's like a high math problem, Jill. And they say, well, just try to remember that outside is inside and inside is outside. Think of breathing, breath. Where really is God or the heavens, or if we think it's inside and outside, just believe it's as one. There's no separation. And when people get it, at first it feels so foreign and vast. But then when you really think about it, you go, wait a second. And that's the part of the mind, I believe, in the centering of the mind, where meditation is, where we understand this. But we've been so trained to believe that there's black and white, number one, number two, all of that. And that's just the system we've grown up in, all of us, especially as Americans. So,
right.
So as soon as you start to understand that, it changes everything.
One of the ways that I've described that to patients is to talk about an astro body, or the sense of like energy is everything, that I'm built from the same light that you're built from. Yes. So we have these bodies that separate us, but really we're the exact same thing as grass, as air, as water. And you talk about that we're completely one, because we're all an energy source. We're all from the same energy source. So that sort of tries to break down. I think the language is important, because it starts to try to break down what we think is true because of what we see, as opposed to what we might feel to be true.
Think, exactly, what we think, what we've been trained to think, exactly. And then that's what we see, right? We see what we've been focused to look at. So I love you and I can have these conversations. You're so wise and educated and smart about this, because you can break it down for your clients and listeners. So it's just understanding and thinking of higher sight or something from when, and retraining that a little so it's more centered and not so left-sided, if you will.
So one of the reasons why, and I'm going to ask you, you're the expert on intuition in this conversation. Tell me, why is it so important? I have my own thoughts on this, but why is it so important for people to tap into their intuition?
Because intuition has your best interest in mind, like nothing else. And I feel that your intuition within knows, just like and you can think when you're younger and you went to sit to take a test and you knew the answer, but then you second guessed. The second guess is so much can offer strife and a lot of going, down a dark hallway. But when your intuition is your very own compass, it makes everything better. So I say that a little more esoterically, because I know probably at this point of the interview, two people are starting to really think about things in a new way. So I'm trying to just let them invite the energy in, or what we're talking about in, versus putting up a defensive wall about not understanding or not knowing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I'm going to give a practical example of that.
Please.
That recently has happened to me. And God forbid, I feel bad for the men listening to this. So I'm single technically, and it's sort of the way I can describe it sometimes. The intuition is that on a very practical level, when you're dating a guy, and you're like, I know deep down, my intuition is telling me he is not the one, and I not calling anyone this, and God forbid, I feel bad saying this, but in this world, this language, there's something called dead space or dead time. I don't know if you've ever heard of that phrase before.
I call it unguarded. I call it unguarded space. Well said.
Unguarded. And what do you mean by unguarded space there?
Well, I don't believe anything's dead. I believe it's then you kind of stepped out of the rhythm of your soul or life. So that's like where cancer goes. It's unguarded, and nothing, there can be no empty space really in our world, as you know. So if it's unguarded or left, you chose not to go north, then you've kind of gone east or west, and that creates a divide where then you can have cancer or depression, kind of what we were talking about. It creates an empty space in the sense that it's unguarded, so you don't know what's going to fill it. So let's say it's midnight, and you know to go home, but you want to stay on a date or whatnot. You can tell when the energy's changed, and it just becomes a less guarded, like your angels aren't going to be there anymore, or your friends aren't going to be there anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So that's great. As I'm like jotting this all down.
No, please, because I think it'll refer to what you're talking about. It's not connecting to deep down, so then you make choices, even if they're with your body or your time that aren't in your best interest.
So if we don't listen to our intuition, and let's say we stay in a relationship for too long, even though as women we know this isn't going well, or this isn't going to, I'm not going to get to where I really am going to feel well.
Yes.
And feel like I'm living the path I'm supposed to be on deep down if I stay here. But sometimes this is where it gets really hard for people, because they can feel this pull of their intuition saying, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing here? This like tapping on the shoulder. A lot of people describe it as a tapping on the shoulder. But sometimes we stay because, God, I really love that person, or I'm attached to them, or I've tethered my life to them.
There's an attachment. Exactly.
There's an
It's not really love. It's usually fear, right, of the other.
Exactly. So take that one step further. It's fear of the unknown. And that comes from, and you talk about this in the book, coming to life from a place of scarcity and not abundance.
Exactly.
That if I let go of this person, there's going to be nobody.
And there's always, we know when we do it, it all comes in, right?
Right.
And if it doesn't yet, so see, some people have said, oh, Jill, this is before reading, they'll say, I broke up with them because I knew it was right, but then it took me 5 months or a year. Well, this is the same thing we're talking about. I don't like the term karma here, but just in energetics, if we stay too long, our bodies might need to heal before we meet our one. It shows in the aura we push them out a little bit. Not we deserve anything, or, oh, you missed the boat. You just energetically, you want to make sure you're healthy, or you're ready for this love of your life. And if you go sideways, like I say, kind of right, left sometimes, then it's going to take a little more energy for you to center to go north again. So it's not that the fates don't love you, or your God or your angels. It's that it's kind of the unanswered prayer again, where you just need a couple weeks or months to get back on your feet, so he or she walks in the door and you have no regret, because your first date's lovely, and your bond is lovely, and you're ready. So people don't understand that energetically. You make these choices. It doesn't mean, okay, I'm going to drop them because my gut says so, and that I deserve that the person's going to walk in 10 minutes later.
Right.
Some things have to realign sometimes. Sometimes they don't.
Elizabeth Lesser, who heads the Omega Institute, I don't know if you've read any of her books, but she's going to be on the show in a month or so. And she wrote a beautiful book called Broken Open, and it's about staying conscious through these times. And she describes intuition as a knocking at the soul. Like there's it's like you feel like a knocking or a longing, and you feel a pull towards doing something that's like almost unstoppable sometimes.
I love it. Yeah, but it's a knocking only when you've stepped away from it. Does that make sense? I really want people to understand this, because
what do you mean by
a lot
that?
of times it's feel really graceful and easy, and then sometimes even I get a little harder knock. I don't get the hard knocks, I hope, anymore. But does that make sense? You get the knocking if you really weren't listening. It's like if someone's at your door, a friend's coming over, and you don't open the door, and they text and say they'll be there in 5 minutes. The door's not open, then they're going to have to knock lightly. If you still don't hear them, they're going to knock harder. If the door is wide open, they're going to walk in, and your intuition isn't going to even be in that knock. But I love that she's saying that. that's just still creating a little space. And that's the gap I'm trying to close for people. It doesn't have to be a knock. It might just start coming in like a breeze, if that makes sense. Because people wait for the knocks. And I often say, but you knew this before the knock, if that makes sense. So,
right.
Just food for thought. But Elizabeth Lesser's amazing, teaching at Omega this summer. I haven't met her officially. So I love what she's doing. But I just think your listeners are ready to go all the way in. We're now in this Aquarian age and this time where we don't have to have this go toe in the water or knee deep. Just dive in, because it's similar to cold water or anything. It feels so much better when you go in. You just got to get in instead of this 50-50 or resistance. That's what I'm trying to break down, because that people are feeling energy. Energy's moving faster, as we all know. And people then don't feel that they can catch up to their life or to politics or to 2017. But part of the reason is because they're waiting for knocks. So just food for thought there.
So you're saying what, and I think, so I just want to make this, I want you to be able to highlight this point, because I think what you're saying is probably important, and I'm taking it in as you're saying it, because I've never heard it put this way before. Yeah. So you're saying you really need to listen to the smaller, or really need to pay attention to the smaller whispers, that it doesn't.
Exactly. Go ahead, sorry.
No, and so one of the ways, Can you talk to the listeners a little bit about what are those what do they sound like? I mean, I imagine when you say that, then you start to see what synchronicities or
exactly. Well, or that so well said. You invite the synchronicities in. So I'm still saying this. So it's kind of like you're going to lunch today or tomorrow, and you say, what should I have today for lunch? And you listen to your gut, truly your gut, right? I mean, your stomach. Sometimes it might need meat and a burger. Sometimes it might need a salad. But you you center for a minute. That calms your nervous system down, calms even your sugars down or your hormones. You say, what do I need today, body? And it'll tell you. When you do that, you've created all these little moments of making yourself go forward. So then the synchronicities start happening, because you've added up, let's say synchronicity is a puzzle. You've done 10 choices that are in your intuitive best self or your wholeness. And then the synchronicity happens that night. You meet the love of your life. I mean, that's honestly how it happens. People don't realize the little steps and people ask me this all the time, how do I get there? You literally ask yourself, should I yell at my child right now? Probably not. Where's that coming from? Oh, that's coming from, my childhood. That, I know these get tricky, but the more you pause and ask yourself what to eat for lunch, that affects how you treat everyone in your day, how you affect your body, what date you end up wanting to go on, because you have certain chi in your belly. See how it all adds up? It's all a fluid, similar to what we were talking about earlier, that it's not outside, inside, it's one. Then people start making simple choices that leads them to even more opening of their intuition without needing hard knocks or breaks.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to slow this down just a little bit, because I know that at this point, and where I just want to be careful. When I remember being in college and you get two professors in a room and they start going and you're like, I have no idea. This has gone so over my head. So I'm worried that we're going to do this. So what you're saying there is...
Cut anything out too. Yes, go ahead.
No. So synchronicities, what you're saying is then, for people who don't know what a synchronicity is, for me, a synchronicity, like I had one this morning where, and I don't know if you'd call this a synchronicity, but I'm able now to pretty much say, I need this person to call me, or I have a really strong feeling that person's going to call me today, or I kind of call them out to the universe to call me, and I'd say almost 95% of the time it happens within the next hour or two, or I get a text message or an email. And it can be very random. It can be someone I haven't spoken to in 2 months. And so that for me is a synchronicity. And what you're saying there is that as you practice, I would say, intuitive eating, as you practice even intuitive eating, that intuitive choice to eat from a place of intuition, just those little choices all day long start to build the muscle of using your intuition more and more, and connects you to your internal energy source and to an external energy source. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And breathing, more deeply in a moment. I don't just want to make it food, because I know that can get obsessive for people, but exactly. So that's exactly what I'm saying. And I apologize, because this is chapter 1 in the book, breaking these meanings down. So it would be good to probably read the book as well.
Yeah,
I know you have, so thank you for
well,
that.
no, the book, for me, the blessing of the book, and I love that you go on to talk about the 7 chakras, and I want to go into that a little bit. But for me, the real blessing and the gift of the book is the first couple of chapters, your preface and then your first chapter, because it is really hard. And you pack it in there, but in a very readable way, exactly what we're talking about. You give it a language, and I thought, my God, I have an MFA in creative writing from Columbia. I study this as a journalist, as an academic, and I practice it as a therapist, and you nailed it. You totally nailed it. One of the things that you say that we have to do to start listening to our intuition is quiet the mind. And I get a lot of resistance about meditation from people.
Yeah.
And it's so sad to me because I don't just tell people to meditate to calm their parasympathetic nervous system and because of all the health benefits that we've proven it has for us. I tell them because a lot of people come in and they say, well, I don't think I'm doing the right thing with my life, but I don't even know what I want to do. And they've completely cut themselves off from intuition.
Yep.
And until you meditate, that is such a key piece to this. Until you can quiet yourself, you can't hear that inner voice.
It's so true, I would say. And for some people listening, I'm sure a lot of your listeners meditate, you can think of it as walking slowly, breathing, taking a 5-minute time out and putting on classical music. I try to not look at the word meditation. It's why I changed energy or chakras into energy centers. I knew intuitively I've got to give it its English term so people invite it in. So if you can just think stillness, or, there's a great old book, Be Still and Know, from such a great quote in the Bible. I don't believe the quote is be still and know I am God. I really do believe the quote is be still and know, just to kind of bring it in. So people can just start being still in whatever form. That will help so much, because also what's happening is you're clearing layers off of you like an onion or an artichoke. Now, we've all put this hard shell up in some form, and you got to peel back those hard outer layers, those walls. And that's what I even had to do. And I still go back and clean up when I need. Because for my, childhood or my first years, it was just my personality coming into the world being a little too soft and whatnot, So for people listening, whatever pulls those layers off is helpful, or just lays them down. So at the beginning, it might not be meditation. It has to be slow, yin. It can be talk therapy as part of it, but it needs to be laying it down, laying the gamut down, whatever form. So I think for a lot of people, if they can do that, then they'll go into the soft artichoke heart and start to meditate, because they'll let it in. So food for thought. Yeah.
And you say that it can only take 3 minutes. Like even 3 minutes can be a beneficial way to feel your intuition.
So well said. Exactly. And quickly. I mean, people come in and we do things for 16 seconds, 2-3 minutes. I'm not saying changes your whole life and you've mastered the book. It just means we do these meditations. We call it spiritual Botox for people who've never meditated. 3 to 5 minutes.
Spiritual. I usually call it spiritual porn. Like, house porn. Like, I could look at house magazines all day. I could talk spirituality all day. It's, like, so porny to me. I love spiritual Botox. But we have to write an article for some magazine called Spiritual Botox.
Say that. Yeah,
so
exactly.
Awesome. So wait, you do these little exercises very quickly, and what happens?
And that people center. So just for those that, it's just you go in the middle of your mind or the middle of your heart, or you just calm for a minute. You stop from a busy day, from pickups and work and all that. And you touch base to your intuition. And right when they're coming out, I say, set an intention if they need to quiet the mind, like set an intention of what you want. Or I say, what comes in right now? And everyone nails it every time. They say, comes in, I need to do this breakup. It comes in, I need to get a new job. It comes in. And I make them say it where I witness it, because otherwise in 10 minutes or later that day, if they've just started to meditate, they're going to forget, or they're going to talk themselves out of it. Mm-hmm. So it's important to have that witness, energy come in. So for those listening, yes, 3 minutes, but you're going to want to make sure that you really make a commitment to honor what comes in. And it helps grow. Yeah.
And then let's go into the 7. They're traditionally called chakras, and mm-hmm. I loved how you renamed them energy centers. So then each chapter of your book follows one energy center. Can you just give a rundown of that for the listeners?
Yeah. a very practical rundown because I didn't know what they were or believe in them either. And they started coming in reading.
I also say I'm an accidental spiritualist, and I talk about right, I didn't want to, I don't believe this, and then you're like, I guess I kind of have to believe it.
So well said. I agree. So energy centers, are known, or chakras are known as a spiritual wheel of energy or light. And they really are that. And you can tell in a person when they have their energies open, even if they don't know what a chakra is, like a great actor or musician or political leader, you can just tell when they're just centered and radiant. They just have it. A great talk show host, right? They've got their energy centers pretty balanced. And if they don't, a lot of times they'll get called out on it publicly. So it's pretty interesting. But energy centers are wheels of light that go up the spine. Some people believe they're around the aura as well. We'll just stick to the main 7 energies of light. So they're kind of circular like a disc moving. The root is your first one, very important. It's the color red. It's really about security and grounding and safety and your needs being met. Really cultivates the first 7 years of life. And I often say, because of the brainiac side of me, it's really in the back lower part of your brain that it's connected to. So if you're stuck in patterns, that's where it's stuck. You learn patterns when you were little, you don't even remember. And then so it really blocks that area. A lot of people are blocked in their root. That's where you see your sit bones, legs, all the way down to your feet, kind of like the root of your tree. Second energy center is right at your central organs. Color's bright orange. I think no one disputes this. I've seen an aura for a long time too. And you want to keep that really vibrant if you can. And that's pleasure and joy and just relationship to other. And that's where addiction is a lot of times in form of energy. It's think about sexual addictions, food, drug, alcohol, shopping, internet, any of that. And it's connected to age 7 to 14. And you've probably heard me say it in the book, I think we're stuck here, really stuck here in junior high. That's the queen bee wannabe. And there's, adults acting that out every day in the office or in, school groups or all sorts of stuff, right? So our adulthood's really stuck. The political system, the last race was so second chakra, so young, right? So that's age 14, right? Very important energy center. We're stuck, I believe, there. The third is gut and so powerful. It's our stomach area. It's bright yellow. Solar energy. It's such an important energy center for transformation, for being empowered, feeling your worth, especially for women. Very important energy center. It's self-assertion, all these great things. Some people say boundaries. We wrote a bit about that. I don't love the term boundary because once again, that's implying that there's a space between, but we'll say it just for the sake of people feeling empowered and more fearless. And then the heart is known as the conduit, and it's color green or bright pink. And it's really important. This is what all the great mystics and humans have ever spoke of, getting to that place. So Jesus, the Buddhas, Mother Teresa, Maya Angelou, Nelson Mandela, a lot of people who really understand life. And like you said at the beginning, went through some things, right, to get there, really understand the heart. And that's where compassion is. And I do think that's where true love is, and love for all people, not the love we discuss, which is really more conditional, which is second chakra, right? And we learned conditions. We really did. And our parents learned them and grandparents. So this goes way back. It's not a blame thing at all. But getting up into the heart is where true just joie de vivre is. And what I've noticed is really health, because if we're in our 30s or 40s, we're not in our heart, we are stressed, and our heart and our lungs feel it, and we're not breathing deeply enough, and we're not finding true love. So then the fifth is known as the throat, purification and really liberation. That's freedom. That's what I'm finally stepping into. You're beautifully stepping into that. It's not easy. Most try not to ever get there, especially if we're kind of told, who do we think we are? Right? But it purifies the heart, right? And also takes energy off the brain. So very important that we're using our voice. And women have been so stifled there. Minority energy has been stifled. Children have been stifled there. Run into a lot of issues, especially in the thyroid. And just a lot goes on when we're not speaking truth. We hold too much energy on the heart and breast. And then we have heart disease, cancers, all of that. And so huge energy center is in this gorgeous blue. I often say, think of the sky. Even if you're very religious, the Mother Mary sky. Bring that in through your throat, and it'll set you free. And then third eye, or front part of the brain, which is that higher eye. I tried to step away from third eye, and they kept putting it back when beautiful Harper was helping me edit. They would, we talked about it. I won't blame them. I wanted to do it too. But I'd love for people listening today just to think of it as more of a wise part of your mind, near the front of your brain, where your forehead, kind of what comes into its wisdom in its later 20s. But by the time you're about 40, that area should be so intact. And then that's a big part of how intuition then comes in and out through that higher eye, or however you want to look at it, but comes in. And then once again, you're using both the right and left side of your brain evenly. And then so you make wise decisions. I say the partnership, like have a husband-wife team in your brain, just so you understand left side, right side better. And know that that's the partnership within. So that's kind of hearing the voice within better, because you're kind of witnessing it and like having a conversation with yourself versus just letting it go into the left side of the brain and then making it too ego-based or too black and white. And then the crown is known as the seventh, and that's kind of the halo, I say, or just right above your head. And that's all your wise beings coming in. If you believe in the mediumship or believe in God and angels, certain disciples, grandparents, why I think all wisdom's there. I really think we're all one. And then when you open it, that comes in. And those are the main energy centers. And when they're balanced, it helps everything: health, harmony, metabolism, longevity. It's just magic. So
I know we don't have time to get into it today, but the book talks about how to keep these energies open, right?
Thank you. Yes.
And, yep. And so when you buy the book, that's one of the things, because I was going to ask really quickly, but it's hard to go through each chakra. Right? So there's ways to actually, is that clear the chakra? I mean, most people say clear the chakra or clear the energy center. How best do you put it?
Yeah, clear is lovely. Clear or balance or center your energy, whatever feels right for you. There are all different ways to learn, but any of those work. Any of those are saying the same thing.
And you give those actual practical tips in the book on how to do that with each energy center. Just by listening to you, I wrote down a couple more questions. Mm-hmm. Do you feel our intuition then, if we can keep these energy centers open and move kind of as we grow up through the body in terms of hitting different stages of enlightenment? And I don't want to enlightenment shame anybody. So when I talk about reaching different levels of enlightenment, some people put their head in their hands and are like, oh, like I'm never going to get there. Like, are you more enlightened than me? And enlightened means, just for me, living in your truth, really knowing what your truth is, and then having the courage to step into that truth. That's like reaching new levels of enlightenment. So I don't want to say that someone is more enlightened than necessarily another.
No, not at all.
But do you believe that if you can work on these energy centers as you age, as women, I don't feel like it's right for me to ask you. I'm 41, but as you age, do you feel that women, women and men, become more intuitive as they get older?
This is such a great question. I say this is like a closet, and so everyone can look. The mind. So how clear is your closet? So the more we've lived, the closet or our house can be so packed. The more we live, we can be wise enough to recycle and give away and clear. So at any moment, it's kind of like chance favors the prepared mind. I don't want to once again get into an intellectual, but it's a math problem, meaning the more you grow, you can accumulate more stuff or more thoughts or more biases in your brain. So it can be, some would say it's harder as we get older. Some would say it's easier. So for me, I say that's you with your maker. And look in your closet, look in your junk drawer, look in your purse. These are key ways to say how crowded are you in your brain. And if you're crowded, you cannot hear your intuition, because it's that little voice. It's like the tic-tac at the bottom of the purse, at first. And then all of a sudden, your purse is clear and you can catch that, or your keys in a heartbeat. Pictured as keys, it's the same thing. So I know it's a funny answer, but I want just to invite everyone to, the more you clear out even your truthful closet, like Marie Kondo does so beautifully, more joy comes in your life, and then you hear your intuition because it's not muffled with a bunch of stuff or theories over it. So as we age, yes, our brain can do it, right? Does that make sense? We're wise. Our brain's fully formed, but some people never get to the fully formed brain. They're stuck in the back, right?
And I would like to point out here, just in terms of the people that I worked with as well, and just living my own life, is sometimes it's your own house that you have to clean, and sometimes that means letting go of toxic relationships. Because I think when you're really working on your energy centers, and you meet someone, or someone comes into your life, whether you're at the supermarket or it's a more interpersonal relationship or professional relationship, if you're really attuned to your own energy centers and you start becoming more attuned to other people's energy, now when people walk into a room, for me, I can pretty much tell whether or not I think that they're on medication, if they're suffering with addiction, if they're diet is poor, like you can feel for me, I see
Well,
the
you can see
energy.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And so that can be really hard. I was going to ask you about this. That can be really hard because a lot of people, 80 million Americans, are now on psychiatric medication.
Yeah.
And so the
Yeah.
point I really want to make here is that when you're on medications like that and you're deadening spirit, you're living in a more shallow pool, you're anesthetizing what you feel. It's much more difficult to hook into your intuition.
So well said. And
So
you're literally dulling your gut too, truly. I mean, I don't think spirit's ever truly dulled. It's always there. But you're creating a divide or not letting yourself get into your spiritual body or hear God or hear spirit, if that makes sense. Because I want you to think of it clinically really quick. You taking medication wrecks your gut and stomach lining. And people are going to prove this. And then that really affects your brain and your behaviors. And that, I think that link's going to be discovered in the next decade, hopefully sooner. Because when you take medication, you've literally ruined a lot of your receptors in your gut, in your brain and your gut. And that works hand in hand. I see that a lot in readings.
are you talking about more antibiotics than psychiatric medications, or both?
Both. I mean, both. But there's no people know I'm such a purist. But I don't, there's no judgment. I think they're wonderful bridges. I think I'm so glad we live in a world and culture. I had natural childbirth in the hospital. We need Western and we need it. We need drugs and we need it. I'm not saying someone with psychiatric energy going on should be off drugs, but just being aware, because then maybe you can eat more probiotic food. You can balance some of it in the short term, that kind of thing. And then people wonder why people act as they do, and then they need more drugs. Well, that's part of it, including teens and college people and adults. A lot of their behavior is because their gut is wrecked. So it's just food for thought there. I want to help people not judge each other as much and know what's going on. The doctors that are subscribing or the pharmaceuticals, they're trying to do good things, but it's also wreaking havoc. So
right, that's another thing I keep saying over and over again as I started this podcast, because I don't want to medication shame anyone. I used to joke. I was head of the Postpartum Support International for the tri-state area for a really long time for the state of New York, and I used to say the breakfast of champions for new mothers is a Zoloft and Starbucks. Like that's what I took. Like definitely even though I gave natural childbirth, I still during postpartum, that was what you were told to do. You were told if you had some postpartum depression, take a little Zoloft and kind of move on with your day. And now I've done a 180 with this, but there's no medication shaming here. We're just saying that it does flatline you. We know this. Like you can't cry. It interferes with your sexual functioning. It interferes certainly with your gut. Definitely antibiotics do. And all of the food that you eat and what you're taking in changes your body, which in your body is the receptor for the information that's going to come in and let you hear your intuition.
You remember, it's a relationship. So I love that we keep going back to intuition. Intuition's a relationship, the right side of the brain. So drugs actually take away the relationship to your body, to your psyche, to your flora. That's all. So then it's dulling it, exactly what you said. It's taking it away. Certain foods coating it, and then it muffles it, kind of like putting your hand over your mouth. You can't hear your intuition when there's something covering that voice. So,
and it's just before we end, I do want to say that it can be a really lonely space. I mean, we both touched upon it today, that when we were breaking open or going through spiritual awakenings, it felt lonely at times. And then it can be lonely when you do work really hard on making sure that your energy centers are clear, when you're meeting people who necessarily haven't learned this information yet or decided that it's not their time to work on it, and it can feel isolating. And that's why it's really important for intuitives, or if you're hearing things, or in my field, if you were hearing things, you would tell someone they're delusional. And so this is why tribes are so important, because even talking to you today, I'm like, okay, it grounds me, right? I'm not crazy. Yes. Like, here's another woman who's gone through this experience and is out there sort of talking about it. And so it's really important. I want people to know that you're not alone as you experience tapping into this energy force that's around us all of the time.
Exactly. And the energy force is so full of love and support. So if you think your intuition is telling you to jump off a bridge or not be friends with someone. That's not really what it's saying. It doesn't want you to be alone. It's connective, but it wants you to be able to discern when things aren't healthy, and then find, like you said, the tribe or energies that support you. That loneliness, I do think, is in the ego, in the second and first chakra. I realized for me, I experienced it because I had experienced that when I was younger. And so I would go there when it was kind of like I would fuel that old flame, like, oh, I feel alone, because I felt alone when I was little. But truly, that was, you learn through intuition to make a choice to not feel alone. And then all of a sudden someone calls you, like you said, or you send out an energetic calling. And we're now in the years, because people go, oh, Jill, but I said it's around 2012, the veil got lifted. So don't think about the 80s or 90s or even the millennium. Think about the now, that now we can lift and open this. It's a new time, and that will help people not feel alone, because maybe they tried it when they were 18 or 30, and that was a long time ago. And now this is coming to light, hence this beautiful podcast. So try again. And if you feel lonely, ask yourself why. You might be trying to trigger an old pain or an old loss that just needs to be cleared out. So
I think part of the path to spiritual enlightenment is learning how to be alone and not feel lonely. Not feel that. And what you really realize as you go down, the spiritual rabbit hole, is that you were never alone to begin with.
Well said.
Because we're, right?
Go ahead. Yep.
And so for me, I'm an intimacy junkie. Like I make my living off of being intimately connected to people in a room. You do too, right? It's an intimate thing to do readings for people, to do therapy in a room. It's an incredibly intimate relationship, and I feed off of it. I thrive off of it. But for me, for a while, I could spend time alone, but I would feel feelings of loneliness quite often. And what I came to realize in the year, what I call my death year, in my death year, I learned that oh my God, I'm not alone. As I'm taking a walk out in nature, I'm completely connected to everything around me.
And you cleared your root, which is stunning. Once you feel that, then you're back in your root, because that got probably, or you just felt it got taken away at some point, or you felt alone, and now you're back in your root. The reason I mention this is because you don't want to be a junkie, remember, because then that'll be an overbalanced second energy center.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Just that's going to help everyone's relationships. You don't want to be a junkie either in that form, because then you attach to outside, the room, people. And that's the part we really want to clear for you to hear intuition. The second energy center and in the sixth energy center are so connected. So I really want you and everyone to know that. The second energy center is where intuition begins, and then you connect eventually to that wise part of your brain. And that combo is like a stunning team. So you don't want the second energy center to get too obsessed with intuition or reading a room, because then you won't be hearing your internal voice. So just food for thought there. You want to make sure that your internal voice is first, and then whatever happens outside your body, there's no attachment to it. And that'll help people hear their intuition more.
So what we call that in therapy is a doorknob comment. Do you know what
What's
that is?
A doorknob comment? On the way out?
Yes, and you're like, wait, what? No, that's so awesome. Usually, it happens. Patients, you have this session and you're like, okay, and then all of a sudden you feel like it's time to wrap up, and then all of a sudden they get up and they say something so profound, and you're like, wait a second.
No, but I don't like that. I do that for sure. I'm sorry. Everyone's gonna be like, huh? Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to try to break it down, because again, it's sort of translating. Let's see if I can translate that. So you're saying that. Let me see how I can.
Everyone's ready for this on your podcast, and they are so guided by you. So this is so brilliant. So go ahead.
I'm gonna take it from a slightly different angle. One of the things that you said was, if you're too focused on feeling your intuition, you're not grounded enough.
No, if you're too focused on outside. Thank you
outside,
for right. You're too focused on reading a room or outside. You will not hear your intuition. This is so key for you and the listeners. This one took me a while to understand. I understood it once I was in college, just because I'd been away from family and being under a roof, so to speak, and that's what set my intuition free. So you're nailing a key part that we've talked in no interviews about.
I see.
So I'll break it down.
All right. So so you're saying, if I'm constantly meeting people, which I do all the time, and I'm reading their energies, because you can't almost help it. It's really hard to shut it off.
That's left brain though, but that's left brain. Remember that. That's your analytics. That's your book knowledge.
And so,
right?
so I'm reading what's going on in front of me, but
Yeah.
you still, the balance is being able to hear what's going on inside as well.
Exactly. Because you want to hear the right side. So I'll break it. So we are so trained intellectually, which is left brain, and I am too. So I want you to know, I mean, you're so much more, you have so many more degrees and everything. So it might be harder for you in this sense at first. And a lot of people are very educated. We've learned to judge, and we've got stuck in that judgment unconsciously. That's America. So we've been, right, religion, everything. We've learned to judge, and we get stuck in judgment. Where intuition and right side kind of goes, oh, honey, you're judging them, but just have compassion for them, or understand why they do it, which I know you do clinically, but understand from your heart, understand from the roundness of it, not the let me evaluate them. And intuition is in the roundness, in the right side of the brain. It's in the side of like, oh, yeah, you can see 10 addicts in the room, but don't care. See them as fathers and children and get behind it. That's the voice within. Go all the way in, not because a judgment is a mini wall. It's a mini evaluation of someone, and everyone's intuitive, and they'll read that in you. Then they get more, think about brain terms, they get in their amygdala. They're like, oh, shoot, there she is. She might be judging me. I think one reason why the book came forward and why this is all coming forward is because I really deeply understand, okay, I know that I'm in the room. I know that person's a pedophile. I know that person is on, opiates, but I don't care. I love them anyway. I don't stop there. I go all the way in. That's how I can thrive too and survive with intuition.
So it's interesting because for me, what happened was, and this goes back to separateness and oneness. I stopped. It took me probably a long time to let go of the clinical brain. Also, because again, the way we're trained is to diagnose and then to generally prescribe. So when I went through the spiritual awakening and started really moving from a place of intuition and then reaching this place of unconditional love, that's exactly what you're talking about. No matter what someone says to me, they are me.
Exactly, but you are them. So
and I am them.
Yeah, it's that part B. It's a very important part. The reason, so a lot is out right now about the junkie energy, and I cannot say this enough. That is very second chakra, and I love everyone who brought it out. It's so great. It was needed at a time possibly, but we're not in that time anymore. And that energy is a disharmony in the second chakra. It's having an over relationship with something outside of you. And you can't hear the voice within. And this is where people get very confused. They go, oh, no, I really intuitively knew everyone was, being a certain way, or they were in, whatever it is. But it's a judgment, and that's not intuition. And that's the hardest part for people to get all the way in. Does that make sense? Because if you think they are me, then you also need to know I am them, and that centers it. You just got to make sure you're going all the way in and really knowing they are me and I am them. Even if you find them yucky, that's something triggering in you. And that's once you understand that, then you're empowered to change the trigger in you and not try to change them. I'll speak for myself. Whenever I am in that mode of going to a party and I'm energetically reading something in the room, I am not in my intuition. I'm not. So I want everyone to know that, even me, highly intuitive. So
how do you get back into your intuition in that moment then? Is it important for you to get back?
Yeah, I click right back. I mean, I don't even know if I do it anymore, but I probably do and don't catch it. So I want to take full ownership of that. But I breathe. You breathe deep. And this is why, and this is so good for the book. People go, oh, it's just breath, Jill. I'm like, breath is everything. If Pfizer could patent breath in the lungs, we wouldn't have drugs. We would have the internal organs, but our capitalism culture can't patent the internal body. That's what I think is a big part of this is the breath, breathing deeply into your diaphragm centers your brain. So you're not in the judgment left brain anymore.
So I'm going to fall asleep every night with your book by my bedside so I can see that it's there, and it gives me courage. And I wake up, I'm going to see it that it's there. I'm really happy that you've stepped out and done this work because the world needs it, and it was your time, and it's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And but more importantly, it's going to help, I think, millions of people.
No, I can't thank you enough. And please, same to you. Thank you so much for your time. We'll be in touch.
Okay, right. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay,
thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
My hope at this podcast is to break down the stereotypes some of us may have towards intuits. I certainly had them up until a little over a year ago. I kind of only, I would say, half believed in them. I kind of only half believe in myself, as you learned from Monday's episode. I also think it's crucial we all learn, especially women, how to hone our intuition and then channel it for the good of our own lives and for the good of those around us. This will not be the last discussion, actually far from it, about human and universal consciousness that we're going to have on Unscripted. I can tell you right now that coming up, we have on the show Dr. Eben Alexander, who is a neuroscientist, a neurosurgeon, and the New York Times bestselling author of the book Proof of Heaven. And we also have Sukhdev Jackson, who is a prominent yogini in and outside of the Kundalini yoga community. And if that's not enough, she's also an internationally known musician. Again, I want to thank you for joining us today on Unscripted. For more Unscripted, visit us at thedaily.com. That's thedaly.com. I'd also love it if you guys emailed me at nell@thedaily.com. I'm still able to personally check my emails, which is great. And I love any kind of show ideas you guys want to toss my way or comments. And as always, you can follow my comings and goings on Instagram at Nell Daily. We at Point Zero all hope you guys have a lovely rest of your week. And as always, may the light in me shine to the light in you. Namaste.